of the characters has some features, some characteristics, and they may have some goal. Well, I think in the next 20 years, the characters in the computer games are going to get more and more complicated. And eventually they may have several levels of cognitive activities. They may have remember what they've done and not repeat it, and they may have a sense of their own identity, and they might think about, should I do this? No, because I don't have the ability to carry out that plan. So now you could ask, do those people exist? And you could say, no, they're just simulated in a program. But eventually, maybe they'll have programs as large as those in our own human brains, and those processes do everything that we can do. So now you could ask, for all we know, you and I don't exist in a physical sense. We're just being simulated by a fairly big computer somewhere. And all these lights and cameras are being simulated by a program. So you can't ever know that you exist. You might be a simulation. It's the process itself that's the real thing, and it doesn't have to exist in any ordinary sense. It's just possible.
So you're defining real as possible. Anything possible is real, but there's no independent sense of reality.
Yeah, so I wouldn't use the word real at all. I think it's obsolete and unnecessary.
And
however, it makes sense to talk about what's happening in this universe, which is the one that we're stuck in.
So to ask the question, what stuff is real, you can't even answer that question because...
No, I'd say, to say that this button is real is to say it's in this universe that we're in. To say that the universe is real makes no sense at all. It's just possible.
Okay, Marvin, maybe we couldn't tell if our universe were real or simulated. But somewhere, there would have to be a real, unsimulated, bedrock reality universe. Maybe the real question is simple. Is existence only physical? Then, for me, the axial issue is consciousness. All else can be explained by the material world. Only consciousness is up for grabs. Is consciousness derived from accidental biology, as most scientists believe? Or is consciousness somehow fundamental in the cosmos? A philosopher who challenges conventional wisdom on this is David Chalmers.
What is there in the world? I think this is a really interesting question. I mean, the world does contain some stuff. It does contain some things, but is there an ultimate catalog of all the things that exist? You know, my hand, my shoe, my hair, this room, the number 2, the planet Venus. Can we draw up a list, an inventory of all the things that exist in the world? So I think there's got to be something wrong with that question. The world has a nature. What we're doing in science and philosophy is studying the nature of the world. Maybe it even has a fundamental nature. There's physics, maybe there's consciousness, and who knows what there is at the fundamental level. And then there's any number of ways of carving this world up into entities. So my own view is there's not one privileged way of carving the world up into things.
But what about categories of things? Are there things we can distinguish from other things?
I think you can introduce all the categories you like. You know, if you want to talk about numbers, you can. If you want to talk about people, you can. You want to talk about sentences, you can. You want to talk about unicorns, or maybe you can't. So maybe there are some rules. But now the philosophers, like the mathematicians, sure, there are numbers. Now the philosopher steps back and says, but are there really numbers? Do they really exist? Somehow that's the wrong question. You can do mathematics, you can say there are 4 prime numbers less than 10, without needing to bring in this further realm of the entities that exist absolutely and mind independently.
But you can define things that are made of particles. That's a category.
Yeah, the place I take these questions most seriously is at the fundamental level in, say, physics. You know, it defines certain entities and particles that you need for physics. Maybe those things exist fundamentally. Anything above that, I think, is bookkeeping.
So what are you saying? You're saying there's only one thing and it's the universe, and that we in our maybe very limited mental capacity are slicing it in odd ways when it's unsliceable?
You know, there's just totally different perspectives on the world. So here's one perspective. There's one universe and everything else is just slices of it. Here's another perspective. There's a zillion particles in the world, and everything, including the whole universe, is built up from that. What I'm saying is both of those perspectives are equally right and equally wrong. There's no choosing between them. There's just stuff. That's what the world is.
The reason why I have sensed that this question is important is that it may enable us to see things that we haven't seen before, to visualize the sense of reality in a different way than what we're commonly perceived to do.
So, for example,
If physical reality is one thing, if abstract objects are something else, if consciousness is a third thing, maybe there's a spiritual world where gods live and angels and demons. I mean, people think that, so at least I got to address it. So now I can conceptualize 4 or 5 different big categories. And maybe this whole thing is nonsense.
multiple aspects of reality. I think it's a good way to think about it. Yeah, there's the physical aspect and the mental aspect, and perhaps the abstract, the mathematical aspect. And then we can ask, how do all these aspects of reality relate to each other? Which is the most fundamental? That's a really fascinating question to ask. What are the fundamental aspects of reality? I'm just not sure we need to divide the world into things to do that.
What's all reality? It depends on one's worldview. All is material, even if impossible to understand. Souls and spirits are the real realm. God exists and the Bible is true. Our universe may be a simulation. Consciousness is key. How do I categorize all reality? 2 big categories: physical and non-physical, or material and immaterial. But does the non-physical or the immaterial actually exist? The key, indeed, is consciousness. Is the mind just the brain? If so, then only the physical is real. Or is the mental beyond the brain? If so, then the non-physical is also real. Western religions would have the mental as coming from God, God being the primary category. Eastern religions would have the mental itself as the primary category, without any need for God. If I am forced to choose, I'd go with Freeman Dyson.
I think it's quite likely that the universe has some sort of a mental apparatus, which you can call God if you like, and it has a mental aspect as well as a physical aspect. And within the mental apparatus, whatever it may be, there can be a purpose. So in some sense, the universe has a mind of its own.
For me, for now, a mental apparatus is closer to truth.